Hello and welcome to my Photoshop tutorial. My name's Sunny. I run a portrait company called the Headshot Studio. We're based in the United Kingdom, and I'm going to show you a very quick and easy way to edit a portrait straight from camera and just to make it sing. So there are lots of different ways to edit a portrait, obviously, and this is just one of them. So don't take this as gospel, but this is how I edit my photos, and it seems to be working out pretty well so far. So without further ado, let me just get into it. So first of all, we've put the photo, dragged the file into Photoshop, and first of all we're just going to do a bit of tinkering with the temperature as it's slightly off. So a bit of background on this photo very quickly. This wasn't taken in our studio, this was taken at a LinkedIn event that we were asked to attend, so I was basically speaking there, which was horrific, but it went pretty well. And then afterwards I took headshots of all the delegates at this LinkedIn event, so it's very quick, so it's not up to my usual quality. It's okay, it's a pretty good photo. I think I've got the connection in the eyes, which is the most important bit, but I do have some reflections and a few other things that I need to correct. So, okay, let's get on with this then. So first thing we need to change is the temperature. It's a bit green, it's got a bit of a green cast, and I think it's a little bit too warm. So first of all, if we pick the white balance tool and find any bit of white in the image, so here it's quite sparse, so we'll find the white of the eyes, and let's see what that gives us. So it's very subtle, but you can see it has made a difference. So this is a lot better. I'm quite happy with that. The tint has also gone up, as you can see here, to a slightly warmer tone, but that looks good to me. Right, so in terms of exposure, the exposure is pretty much spot on, so if we just raise it just a tiny bit. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to reduce the contrast. The reason being, I'm going to be using curves later on, and if we have too much contrast to begin with, the curves will just kind of make the contrast ridiculously overbearing, and it'd be way too contrasty. So we're going to put the contrast down to about -40, that's what I usually do. I'm going to bring the highlights down very slightly as well, so about -15. And I'm just going to bring the blacks back in, just very slightly, like that, and just up the vibrance just a tiny bit. The vibrance doesn't need to go up very much, because once you do the curves and you add more contrast in, that will automatically bump up the saturation of the image anyway, so you don't want it to be too saturated. So this is the initial edit we've done here. You can do this in Lightroom as well, but I just find it easier to do in Photoshop, and you can just open the image and then edit it properly. So let's open the image in Photoshop properly. First of all, what we need to do is new layer, so right click on background, duplicate layer, okay, and then so the first thing I usually do is I get the Lasso Tool over here, and I always just want to bring the face and the skin out from the background. So just draw around the face like this. It doesn't have to be neat, like that. It looks quite crude, but I've got my settings here so that you won't really be able to see any runoff in there. So feathering is at 30px. So we've got the Lasso Tool around the face, so I just want to bring it out just a tiny bit. So you push Command M to bring up the curves, and you literally just want to bring it up just a tiny bit, like that. Just a bit too much. Okay, there we go. Get rid of that, and then Command D to deselect, and then you can see it's very subtle, but I just want our face to pop out a little bit from everything else in the image. So let's do another layer. A quicker way rather than right-clicking is to do Command J, and that'll bring up a new layer there. So that's done there. So next thing I want to do is I want to get rid of this horrific shine on her forehead, which is my fault, to be honest. I should have positioned the light better, but due to the circumstance I didn't really have time to do that, but I knew I'd be able to fix it in post anyway. Normally I do try to get everything done in camera as best as possible, but under the circumstance I wasn't able to. So the easiest way I find to get rid of shiny spots like this, and also you can see there's a few blemishes in there as well, so we'll try and get rid of those at the same time. So there are lots of different ways to do this, but I find the best and easiest way to do it is to come here and use the patch tool. So we've got our new layer here, so we go around with the patch tool. Again, it doesn't have to be overly neat, just covering up what you need there. And then what I do is I just bring it over to the background here, and then you can see it's covered it up. So if we do Command D to get rid of that, now obviously that looks awful, and we're not obviously going to finish the image like this. So what we need to do is you come over here to opacity, and let's click that down, and let's bring that all the way down to 0, so back to where we were. And then what we want to do is just really just bring the opacity up a tiny bit, like that. So up to about 50%. That's probably a bit too much. Let's just bring that down a little bit. So I reckon about 45 looks good. So if you have a look at the before and after, it's kind of like magic, really. And obviously when I first did the patch tool, it looked horrendous. It looked terrible. But once you fill around with the opacity, obviously it'll be different for any kind of image that you do. But once you've worked with the opacity, it looks much more natural. So if you just zoom back out, which is Command 0, you can see that we've pretty much got rid of the shiny spot, and it looks pretty good. It looks pretty natural to me. So next up, let's just collapse that layer. So Command E, and we collapse that layer onto there so we can see everything that we've done so far. We'll do a proper one right at the end, which is always really satisfying when you can see all your work from start to finish. So next thing we're going to do is, I can see that she's got a little bit of bag under her eyes there. So I think what we'll do is we'll fix those, and again we're going to use the patch tool. Again, lots of people do this lots of different ways, but again, I just find this the easiest way to do it like this. So she obviously hadn't had much sleep before the event, and let's kind of help her along a little bit. So let's just draw along. Actually, no, bear with me 1 second. Let's get rid of that. So we need a new layer. Okay, and then let's draw along the offending bits, and here as well, like that. And then if we can, there's not much room to kind of move it along here, so I'm just going to move it down here. Not much room there either, so I'm going to actually move it to the forehead. So there we go. Command D to get rid of it, and now obviously again that looks awful. Let's come back out. So again, we're going to work with the opacity here. Let's bring it up just a tiny bit. Now the key to edits like this is to obviously improve it, but you obviously still want to make it look natural. Up to about 50% now. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. So you still want some detail there. You don't want people to have absolutely flawless skin. I don't really believe in that kind of editing. I think everyone has flaws and everyone should embrace them. But obviously we can help people along a little bit as well. So that looks pretty nice. It still looks natural, but we've obviously helped it along there. So let's collapse that layer, and let's bring a new layer up, Command J. And now there's a little bit of reflection here as well under the glasses, and I just want to clean that up a little bit as well. So again, good old patch tool. Let's bring that down here. Now you want to be careful not to touch the glasses here, because otherwise Photoshop will think you're trying to move that as well. So just be careful not to touch the glasses. So again, I've just moved it down to the bottom bit of the skin where there's no shine. If you just do Command D, obviously we've got rid of the shine there, and obviously again it looks awful. So go back to opacity, bring it down to 0, and then just bring it up just a tiny bit until it looks good. There, we've got rid of the shine, but not completely, and it still looks natural. So let's collapse that layer. Let's Command E. Let's Command 0. Let's have a look at it full screen, and then look at that. Looks great. Okay, cool. So we're not done yet. So new layer, Command J. What we're going to do now is we're just going to have a look at if there's any blemishes at all. We can kind of help along as well. So she's got pretty good skin. So what we'll do is there are a few blemishes, so we'll just help those along. Blemishes I don't mind getting rid of because they're temporary things on the skin. So I don't mind kind of getting rid of those. So you go to spot healing brush. Again, lots of different photographers and retouchers have different ways of removing blemishes. I find that the spot healing brush works great for getting rid of blemishes. So let's just use that. So a few blemishes here. That one. She has this little scar here. I'm actually going to get rid of that as well. It's nice. Okay. Like I said, she's actually got pretty good skin. She's lucky. Okay. Not many blemishes to get rid of, which is nice. So let's bring it back to full screen. And again, very subtle, but it makes a difference. Okay, so let's collapse that layer again. So Command E. And next up, I just noticed there's a bit of a shine on her nose there, so I kind of want to reduce that as well. So again, let's go back to the trusty patch tool, put it around there, and just drag it up to a bit where it's not shiny. Command D to deselect it, and again, I don't want to get rid of the shine completely, although I've just realised I haven't done a layer, so let me just go back. Okay, so always remember to put your layers in. Okay, so luckily it still stayed there, the patch tool, so let's move that up. Command D to get rid of it. Okay, opacity down, and then just bring the opacity up until you're happy. So about, I'd say about 30% looks good to me. Yeah, so shine is still there very, very slightly, but it's nowhere near as distracting as it was. Okay, cool, so that looks pretty good to me. Next up, let's just help the eyes along a little bit. Now, things with dodging and burning on eyes, a lot of portrait photographers can be very, very heavy-handed with dodge and burn. I think it's one of those very powerful tools that some people can get carried away with. So I think you just have to tread that line between aesthetically pleasing and realistic, because a lot of times you can do dodge and burn and you come up with like alien eyes or animal eyes on people, which looks really weird. And new layer. Okay, so we're going to dodge and burn the eyes. And dodging and burning basically means we're going to bring out the highlights and make the blacks blacker, basically. So, but like I said, people can get really carried away with dodging and burning. Obviously, that looks crazy. We don't want the eyes to look that bright, so we're going to bring the opacity down. But before we do that, I'm just going to do a little bit of burning on the pupils. Because when I went over with the dodge, I went over the pupils as well, and I just reduced the blackness in the pupils, and we don't want that. We want the pupils to look nice and dark. Okay, come back out. Okay, right. So again, that looks quite odd. So we want to bring the opacity down. We want to bring the eyes out a little bit, but you don't really want to be able to tell that you've done dodge and burn on the eyes. You just want to bring them out just a tiny bit. So literally 20% is plenty. So we brought the eyes out there, but it doesn't look unnatural. So let's collapse that layer again, and Command J, new layer. Okay, let's just have a look there. Okay, that looks pretty decent to me. In terms of hair, I usually tend to leave kind of small strands, like these strands here. I don't really want to get rid of them because I think that looks quite natural. I don't like overly cleaned up hair. I think it looks unnatural, but kind of these kind of wisps here, I think we can get rid of. So, in order to get rid of those, I use the clone stamp, this one over here. Now again, lots of different photographers use different methods to clean up hair. I like the clone stamp, I think it works great, and again, it's the quickest and easiest method. You have to kind of make sure you get all your settings right. Again, the settings are kind of unique to everyone. Everyone has their own preferences. These are mine over here. So, what you want to do is you want to push Alt, and that will give you an area of the background to clone, and just click it. And then you just kind of go over the bits that you want to cover up. And you want to keep on taking bits from the background, because even slight tonal shifts will come across when you're cloning the background over the hair to clean it up. So as you go up, you may not be able to see it, but it will pick it up. Like there are different tonal shifts in the background here. So if you use the background area from down here up here, it might look slightly different. So you want to keep on cloning all the way up as you go. Okay, so again, she's got really good hair. I don't want to get rid of these, but there's this one hair coming out here that I do want to get rid of. Okay. Yeah, looks good. Okay, let's have a look. There, very subtle over here. But it's nice and cleaned, but not too much. Okay, so we're almost there. Let's collapse that layer. That's before and after. So, there's one more thing left to do on this image, and it's my favourite part, and it is curves. You want to do an S-curve. So, I like quite contrasty images for my portraits, and if you go to my website, you'll see that on there. Obviously, there is a limit to contrast, but this whole process I find works really well for me and my style of photography. So if you just do a new layer, so Command J, and then Command M. So now we're going to do what's called an S-curve, and that will give us a really good contrast to this photo. Because at the moment, as you remember when I first edited it, I brought the contrast quite low down, so it's quite flat at the moment. And the reason being is because I knew I would do this S-curve right at the end to kind of bring it all together. And this really is it's magic really. So let's bring the S-curve up a bit. So like most things in Photoshop when you're editing, you want to do things quite subtly. Quite a subtle S-curve. But, you know, again, this is personal preference. Some people don't like contrast in their photos this much, but I do. Okay, so let's collapse the layer, and that's after. So that's before. It's after. Looks pretty good. And there's just one more thing, actually, I remember that I want to do. It's slightly soft, I find, the image. It's okay, it's pretty good. This eye's slightly out of focus compared to this one. Again, I wouldn't have made this mistake in our studio, but under the circumstances, I was quite pushed for time and had to do this quite quickly. So, I do want to sharpen the image up a little bit, so let me just do one more layer. And I don't actually use a sharpening tool for this. What I like to do is a different method. I actually got this from Sean Tucker. I saw this on one of his tutorials, and it works an absolute treat. So we go to Filter, go to Other, High Pass. I'll put this kind of grey thing over it, and then you find a detail like an eye, and you just want it to peek through the grey like this. So I've actually just got it down to 1 on the kind of strength of this. You don't want to do it too much, otherwise it will look absolutely ridiculous. You don't want to kind of like that, just horrible. So I usually go up to about 1 pixel. Yeah, I usually find that's good enough. So let's press OK, and obviously we don't want this. So in order to get rid of this and to see the fruits of your labour here, you go down to here, click on Normal, and click on Overlay, and voila. Again, now like most things in Photoshop, it is a very subtle difference, but the difference is there. So if I just do, again, you probably can't even see it. So if you go in, again, you probably can't tell the difference. I think the easiest way to tell is if you look at the hairs here. There. So it has sharpened the image, but not too much. Again, you don't want too much sharpening in your image. You just want it all to be very subtle. So again, before, after, before, after. Awesome. Okay, thanks again for taking the time to watch this. If you could help this channel out, this is my first video, so if you can help this channel out and just like the video, and if you can subscribe, that would be great, and I can't wait to share more videos with you. Thank you very much. Thanks for watching. Bye.